Anthony, I'm sure the move to independent media is not without risk. What keeps you up at night?
What keeps me up at night? Well, Jocelyn, I think you might be alluding to the fact that I know you wanted to discuss a book I wrote the other year called Pulse Attack, the real story about the secret weapon that can destroy North America. It's a national security book that took a look at how we are increasingly a fragile electronic civilization, meaning we have all these great technologies, these great electronics that we both love for personal use, but they're also empowering our society. And it seems all very advanced, and it is, but all you need to do is shut off the power, and all of that falls apart. And not just our ability to enjoy our streaming services, but our ability to keep our hospitals functioning, our ability to manage our regional food hubs. And in the book, I explore various different ways that bad actors could take down the electrical grid, whether it's through specific attacks on transformer stations or electromagnetic pulse warfare, which I think I was a little ahead of the curve when I first wrote about it, because there was not a lot known about the separating the fact from fiction of it, but more and more places and electrical agencies are doing formal studies of it, because you only really need one bad actor to detonate such a device that could actually take down a large part of the electricity grid for a long period of time.
So, Anthony, just this past few weeks, we saw that the commercial airline industry came to a grinding halt because both in Canada and the United States because of system failure. Do you see this being a part of this pulse attack situation, or is that just an isolated event?
Well, any sort of cyber attack or any sort of systems failure that has to do with our electricity grid is all related, whether or not it's a bad guy out there, a James Bond style villain looking to totally take down the grid, or whether it's an accident like the major power outage we had in the eastern seaboard in Toronto, New York, Buffalo, cities that saw the electricity go down for like 3 or 4 days, ultimately because some trees weren't properly trimmed along a rural street in the United States, and the trees knocked down one power line, and there's a cascading failure. So a lot of people are investigating ways to further enhance grid resilience. So whether it's an electromagnetic pulse detonation up in the sky or a couple trees in rural New Hampshire, neither of those episodes have the ability to take down the grid. I wrote in my book about how because of those trees causing that, babies who were in the NICU in Toronto, nurses had to use hand pumps to keep their breath going, their pulses going. I mean, really wild triage stuff.
So, what can we do to prevent this type of attack? What infrastructure do we need?
Well, we need to upgrade our current infrastructure when the life cycle renews to introduce different parts that engineers on the cutting edge of this issue have determined are much more resilient to act as surge protectors if there ever is an attack from a villain or if there's any sort of accident. So in my research, I found that the grid going down could end up with so many people tragically dying because of lack of access to goods they need, because the grid could stay down for many weeks, many months, depending on the number of transformer stations that are harmed, and of course, trillions of economic damage. But the actual costs to renew some of the key parts to these products that we rely upon aren't actually that high. So it's really just talking about it more and for industry to write their reports on what needs to happen and how they replace those parts. And it's not actually that complicated, is my sense, but I've been glad to see that since I wrote the book, different industry associations have been probing the matter further.
So, give me a prediction. Do you think that we could see here in North America a pulse type attack in the next 1 to 2 years?
Oh, geez, I hope not, Jocelyn. And another way that this can come about is actually a solar flare. A solar flare replicates a pulse attack, or should I say, an electromagnetic pulse attack replicates what a solar flare does. And in 1859, there's something called the Carrington event, where all the electronics on Earth were actually damaged because of a massive solar flare caused by the sun. The only saving grace was, well, 1859, there were hardly any electronics around then. So it was just very basic telegraph machines that caught fire. I hope something won't happen 2 years from now, but black swan events are called that because you never know when they're going to descend. They could happen at any point, and we don't protect against them because the odds of them happening are so minimal But if they do happen, it's so devastating that afterwards you say, why didn't we do anything to protect ourselves?
So talk about the time frame. How quickly could we implement something that would prevent this type of attack here in Canada?
Well, my understanding is it can happen pretty quickly. Like I said, it's about replacing different parts and different transformer stations. And I can't tell you exactly what part and what station because the whole point of the conversation is the industry is trying to figure all that out as well, how they can make themselves much more or much less vulnerable to having any sort of surge hit them.